Welcome everyone to the How Podcast, where we feature individuals from various backgrounds with captivating stories to tell. And our goal in this podcast is to feature people from various backgrounds with diverse experiences, diverse stories that we can all learn from. And that's really what we're all about. And I'm very excited for this episode in particular because this person is a huge friend of mine and also a very talented cinematographer. His name is Jaime Torres, if you haven't seen the title, and aspiring DP. Full-time DP, and I'm excited to talk to Jaime about various aspects in cinematography, even photography, etc. So welcome, Jaime Torres, to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hey man, it's an honor having me here. It's awesome, pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and excited for the viewers to learn more about you and also your perspective on being a DP, being a cinematographer, because there's so many very talented DPs and cinematographers out there. And I think that even though some may have more experience than others, I think that everyone can really get a chance to learn from each other, right?
Yeah, especially because I know like a lot of like cinematography, especially, there's so many projects that are different from one another. So you can always even though you can have a lot of experience, but there's certain times we just have to fix certain issues, because one of the main problems of being a cinematographer, we have to come with solutions and we have to be like problem solvers basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Problem solvers in film, in post. Some people will say in set, fix it in post, but honestly, cinematography is like one of the main key aspects in film. And, I really appreciate really amazing DPs, really amazing camera work, styles, lighting, stuff like that. And I was actually a DP before. I don't do as much of it now, but I really tried to grasp a sense of the camera work, the basic stuff like that, because I'm mostly an editor, right? But I really see the value in every DP just trying to make the story, visually appealing stories in the big screen. And I think that, DPs are very important in that regard. So, I want to thank you for being here, and I'm excited to talk to you about cinematography. But for listeners who haven't met you at all, just kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background too. Yeah.
So, I've been in the industry professionally for 8 years now. I graduated from New York Film Academy in I think it was like around late 2010s. And sorry, my cat is here. So it was around that time. And then from there, I started freelancing. And I also did a couple like editing jobs when I was growing up. I also did sound when I was growing up. Before I was a cinematographer, I think my first thing I ever did was sound. And then from there, I started to be an editor. And then I started, shooting and directing at the same time. I directed most of my projects, and I did cinematography in most of my projects in New York Film Academy. And then from there, I started to freelancing more as a cinematographer. And yeah, ever since then, it's been great. And I've done a couple features. I think I did about 5 features. The recent feature I have is a pretty cool comedic horror film called damn it, hold on.
We'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
But did you write that one or no?
No, I DP'd it.
You DP'd it, okay.
Yeah. It's basically about his family, and that's kind of dysfunctional, and the mom is kind of really psychotic. And she's basically almost killed, she's really insane. The aesthetics was fun. We shot with 2 cameras. We kind of went a little bit on a wide angle close-ups kind of feel. So it was kind of really bizarre, cinematography wise what the characters are going through, but it was so much fun, just overall, with a lot of blood and gore.
I love that. Oh, so violent.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Where did you initially get your passion in cinematography? Because everyone has their own story, right? Some people start with just simply taking photos. Some people literally just watch movies and they're so inspired by that. But I'm curious to have your perspective on it.
So like for me, I started just observing daily life. Observing, walking around, and I think I just got a lot of inspiration at it. I grew up in Chile for about 4 years, and I saw a lot of things that kind of changed my perspective in life. There was a lot of poverty next to the area that I was living at. I saw kids barefoot, really humble. Like, it was really, sad to see. But from there, I just started taking pictures, and then I grabbed I think I used my dad's camera at the time, and I started just taking photographs of the streets. And then, from there, I just got inspired by cinematography. And
Great.
Since then, basically.
Yeah, and you're still a DP till today. And I just wanted to ask, you said you did your education in NIFA, but did you go anywhere else as far as schooling is concerned when it comes to film and cinematography?
I went to New York Film Academy, and I learned lighting workshops. I learned compositions. We also learned the style of documentary, cinema verte kind of style. And it's just, from all those mundane kind of things, I think I started more as a documentary cinematographer. And then I started to jump into narratives and more stylized kind of shots. Yeah,
perfect. And would you say that, I guess, growing up, did you have any sort of favorite films that you always kind of watched that kind of inspired you to be a DP?
Mm-hmm. Blade Runner is one of them.
Nice.
No Country for Old Men with Deakins, of course. He's the best, the master. I kind of like the Grapes of Wrath. The DP who shot that was James Wong Howe. He's one of my favorite DPs. He could definitely shoot the desert pretty well. But I love a lot of those DPs who kind of go for natural light. Another one's Conrad Hall, the DP for American Beauty. Kuhan Luke. He just loves lighting with mirrors. So,
wow.
He basically tries to make it as natural as possible. I mean, that was how they did it back then. So.
Wow, I love those movies for sure, especially when seeing them on the big screen. But I wanted to ask if you had any sort of memorable experiences or challenges as a DP, because a lot of them go through various stuff, right? Whether it's going through the shot list or going through certain thing or working with different departments here and there. But I feel like a lot of cinematographers go through various challenges in the course of their filmmaking career. So do you have any memorable moments or challenges that you want to share?
I think when I was operating on this one shoot, and I think the overloading for the easy rig for me was not the right load for it. So there's those kind of technical issues, and sometimes it can be camera issues. It just goes off for no reason, and you're like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. And then everybody's freaking out, so you just have to figure that out, and then just And I think on the last feature I had, we shot with 2 different cameras, but that wasn't my original intention. I really wanted to get the same camera, and we got a Komodo, mixing with Gemini, 2 reds.
2 reds, yeah.
But the Komodo was having issues, especially it just had those. I don't like how grainy it looks, especially if you don't calibrate. Mm-hmm. So you definitely have to it just basically got shut off by itself. So we ended up calling another rental, and then we got it on the same day on the same spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about different cameras. You mentioned about the red, but do you see even the importance of, for example, you don't have much budget on, for example, purchasing a camera, right? Even people starting out, let's say they don't have like thousands of dollars or something like that to purchase a camera, because the camera usually comes with like its own gear, right? Its own necessary like, equipment, stuff like that, basically, creates that full build, right?
Yeah.
But what about like, the cheaper ones? Like, do you see any value in those as well? Like iPhone even?
Yeah, I do. It just basically, doesn't matter what camera you have, it's how you light it. Especially always lighting it properly, and then get your exposure, and you can fix from there. But just the way you just have to master your lighting. You want to have the depth, so you want to have like a little bit contrast on their faces. You want to go a little bit dark and moody. Always have backlight if you want. It doesn't have to be, but if the story calls for it, then go for it. And it's just a lot of those stylized lighting you want to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned about like, the technical aspects of being a DP, working with different cameras and stuff, but it seems like you actually value lighting even more than learning how to operate the camera. Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, that could be too. But you want to know when to move, like at a point when to move the camera, and if it just feels for it, if it's in your gut. So you want to move the camera in you can do it properly. So some DPs like to do handheld depending on what the story calls for it, or you could do just very, locked off or steady.
Absolutely. And I see a lot of value in lighting though, like especially as an editor, because it does create and tell a story in itself.
Yes,
like for water. Example, absolutely. And even the lack of lighting, even just a bunch of shadows tell a different story. A lot of silhouette, maybe soft can tell a different story, maybe harsh, maybe, I don't know, just a bunch of different options in filmmaking, right? In terms of lighting. But from seeing your IMDb or various projects you worked on, you were actually a gaffer before, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I basically, after New York Film Academy, I started getting into more gaffer route a little bit, mostly non-unions. And it was from kind of like gaffing, I learned my way through, learn how to light, and just watching basically how lighting hits. And from there, I kind of like jumped into DPing, and I kind of learned, you kind of learn how to light things depending, because you have that knowledge basically built in, so you could definitely shape it how you want it. And sometimes I might just step out of the camera and just move things myself if time is running out.
Absolutely, and time is running out. Do you prefer, because when I see with different DPs, even though they work on the same camera and they have the same lighting expertise, right? Like how they frame the camera inside of a movie, they're all like very different in their own way, right? It doesn't matter like as far as like experience is concerned, but I feel like, for example, one DP does this versus another DP does this in the same exact project, right? And some of them even do like more movement and some don't. So I was going to ask you like, do you have a preference on movies or any projects in general, whether it's static, because a lot of movies are basically tripod and static, or some are even more dynamic and like do a lot of movement, whether it's fast or slow? Do you have a preference on which one you like?
I like both. I like both routes. It's good to be versatile. And you have to go, of course, with the story and the characters, go for it. A lot of it just goes with practice. And sometimes when you do the shot, I mean, you can do shot lists ahead of time. But at this point, like, I don't rely too much on shot lists. Sometimes I just see it. So I'm like, okay, I think this calls for this kind of shot or this kind of shot, even though it's not in the shot list. It just feels right. So you just have to capture those moments, or what the character's going through, because things might always change if the character doesn't, even though in the script it says like if the character is going through a breakup, then you want to shoot like, oh, how are we going to shoot this breakup? What is she feeling? Extreme close-ups just to get her emotion. So it's a lot of stuff that you have to look for. And if it's not in a shot list, sometimes the actor can do something else that is not in the script, and you just go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And everyone has their own different styles, expertise, stuff like that. But I also wanted to ask this question because, you know, how everyone has their own various experiences as a DP, as a gaffer, etc. But like, some are considered more exceptional than others. And obviously that's an opinion thing, right? But I wanted to ask, like, in your personal opinion, like, what are the qualities and skills that make a cinematographer exceptional? Would it be, you know, a certain style that they have? Like, for example, Dunkirk, right? Or, you know, any sort of movie like Roma, for example. Like, what makes a cinematographer exceptional?
Being very collaborative and being communicative. I think those are one of the main aspects. And you want to basically have that and communicate, you know, you want to communicate your vision as well to the director if they have any ideas. So you could basically, you know, that's one of the things I'll say. And also, you know, just being humble, you know, no ego on set. Just, you know, keep it cool, and, you know, just sometimes you got to listen to other people as well. So.
Great. And then you mentioned about like collaborating with other departments in the filmmaking industry, which I think is very important. I think that communication is super, super vital in production, as opposed to like having silence on set. I really like when I'm on set and when, you know, different departments really try to work with each other and really try to make the story the best it can be, or and look visually appealing, like a lot, right?
Yeah.
But in your experience, like how do you collaborate? Like, for example, the production design or the gaffer, the key grade, even the director, right? Because both of you go hand in hand. Like, what's your approach in, I guess, collaborating with those various types of people?
So whatever the story calls for, if the story calls for comedy, then you have to find like what colors you're going to be using or how the design is going to look for this comedic scene. Stuff like that, especially, and yeah, you can just find how to work with those kind of things, especially talking with the vision of the overall character and the environment, how the environment is. So you got to think of like the history aspects of it too. What was the time period? So you have to know a lot of these things, and also just look at paintings of how it was too, or, you know, what it looks like basically.
Absolutely. And even just the words director of photography, right? Like, because for me, like, cinematography is art. It's basically images that are sort of moving right in front of you. And I think that, you know, having those collaborations with these other departments are very vital and very crucial to create the mood, to set the tone, to set the style, to set the story, etc. And I wanted to ask you, like, as far as the DP is concerned, you've worked with like various genres too. You've worked with like comedy and a lot of drama. I noticed you worked on a lot of drama, but I wanted to ask, like, do you have a favorite kind of genre to work with as far as the cinematography is concerned, like working with lighting and other stuff?
You know, I love working horrors and westerns.
Yeah, why? That's interesting.
Horrors, I like it just messing with different neon, like different colors of light. And I just love shaping it because you can have so much fun in horror, especially dark and moody. You want to have a lot of those because I love sort of underexposing. I'm kind of guilty of that, but you know, you really want to shape the light as best as you can. And I love westerns just because I love I just love how the desert looks in a sunset. And it's just really, really beautiful. And you can just see the horizon in the background. So it's just something gorgeous about the desert and sunset.
Yeah, and I remember you actually working on various horror and Western films in the past, and they look absolutely very stunning. And do you have also a preference? Because you work with natural light, you work with like lighting on set with various equipment and stuff like that. But do you have a preference as far as working outside or inside? Because that's a totally sort of different style, right?
Well, like I guess I could adapt to inside or outside. it's just because coming from documentaries kind of helped. So you know how to like be flexible with those things and capturing what you can, you know. But you learn how much the light hits, because when you do documentary, you mean it's just natural light. I mean, that's all it is. But you just gotta pay attention how it falls, and that's why I really strongly recommend for, you know, especially for any aspiring cinematographer, just look at life. Don't just look at paintings or, you know, don't look at videos all the time. Just go out there and see it, you know, experience it.
Yeah. So like for me, I see the value in like working inside, because there's a lot of control that's involved, right? Like as far as, for example, you're doing a horror short and it's at night. There's so many things to work with, right? Mm-hmm. And also, I would say it's more forgiving as soon as you set up the camera, as soon as you set up the lighting, even the fog machine inside, if you're planning to do that. But like natural light for me is very beautiful. There's so many locations to choose from, but at the same time, from time to time, I don't know if you experience this, is the lighting goes away if you don't get the shots that you need at a certain point of time, even if it's like 30 minutes to an hour difference, and you don't get the shot because basically the lighting changed. And if you compare like the shots you did before, because you do multiple takes, to the shots you just did, the sun shifts all the time, right? So did you ever get those, you know, problems or challenges in the past where the lighting constantly changed? I know you worked on Mojave Shadows, which is very awesome.
We did. We were a little bit like 30 minutes behind to get it. In the case of Mojave Shadows, because a lot of this is, you have to do pre-production. If you're going to shoot, and when you have a certain time frame with the sun, you have to prep, and you have to have your shot list ready. So you need to figure out, you cannot guess those things. You just have to has to be planned. Mm-hmm. In the case of Mojave Shadows, though, the last scene, which wasn't in the script, the story is about this girl. She hikes in the middle of the desert, and she's contemplating suicide until she gets bitten by a rattlesnake. And then she's just stranded in the middle of Mojave Desert just by herself. And she calls a ranger, and the ranger comes and tries to help her. And, you know, it just becomes these two characters looking, you know, trying to survive. And at the end, like, I had to, I mean, if you haven't seen it already, I'm going to say spoilers. But, you know, just go, you know, check it out when you have a chance. Oh, yeah, spoilers are underneath. Spoilers.
But it's on Amazon right now, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
So if you haven't seen it, check it out on Amazon. If not, skip like maybe 10 minutes or so. Okay, go ahead. At the end, we didn't have it scripted. So, I mean, we had to, like, you know, she basically dies at the end. And in the script, she survives, basically. And I was supposed to have the ranger try to carry her, and this helicopter comes, and we have like a spotlight, and then that was the ending of the movie. Wow. But because we lost lighting, and, you know, we couldn't see Sabrina on the ground, so I was like, you know what, we lost light, but I have an idea. I just saw what I saw, and my gaffer was holding she was holding the tube, and I just have to like get rid of it, and then got rid of it, and it was just the silhouette look of the Ranger McCalloway. Yeah, and it looks absolutely stunning. That became the poster, and it's pretty much everywhere, right? And it's the last shot of the entire movie, and, you know, and things can happen like that, right? You're losing lighting, something breaks, something else happens, or whatever. But I think it's very important to be adaptable and just to have a lot of problem solving skills when it comes to cinematography, because a lot of things happen that are not in your control, right? The Murphy's Law, for example. But in the case of Mojave Shadows, like what you did with the last shot and the silhouette, I think that's a really good like improvisation, right? And even sometimes when in pre-production you're planning so many things, but in the end it doesn't come your way. Now what do you do, right? Like you have to come up with things on the spot, and that actually turned out better than you imagined, right?
Yeah.
So would you say that sometimes, even though things don't go your way or because things happen or whatever, that there's something else that's better, that's always, something you can think of?
I mean, I think it's good to just to have it planned,
Yeah, that's true.
I highly recommend it. But you just got to train yourself, basically. And like, just be training to adapt. And if that doesn't, if things don't come out right on set, then you have to, look for it, basically. Just keep your eyes open.
Oh yeah, totally. But what if you don't get the shots that you've been wanting to get from the shot list because of lack of time, right? Because even though you plan certain things and you're like, shot list, we did this scene, these are the shots, blah 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 blah, and there's like certain shots that are actually really crucial to the story that you don't even get. Like, what's your approach in that? Because like, I've had experience in the past where that things happen, like there's so much wind, it ruined the sound, and then we do reshoots, right? And obviously it costs more money, it costs more time with crew and cast and also rentals, stuff like that. But do you see the value in like redoing things and doing reshoots if you don't get the shots that you need? Or do you just sometimes kind of just let it go and be like, that's not that important?
This depends on it depends on what the story costs for it. And if the shot has to make sense. So of course there's going to be sacrifices. So you have to sacrifice some shots that doesn't fit the story. You just got to look at that, and then from there you basically, if another thing happens, you just have to adapt. And if that doesn't work, then you just have to move on and think of another shot.
Think of another shot, like the Mojave Shadows one with the silhouette. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite DPs and why?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I like Conrad Hall because he did a few westerns, and I think he also, because he knows how to use natural light pretty well. And at that time, especially if you wanted, because now you can have you have the power of the sun now with the lighting, with the new LED lights. And back then, I guess he kind of had to use the mirrors basically, and that's it's still like strong. If you're really low on budget and you have time to use the sun, you can use mirrors, but make sure you have flags to soften it out. But yeah, he's basically my favorite DP.
Mm-hmm. I really also appreciate the DPs that do really well in like war movies. What was that one war movie that won like a couple years ago, I believe? And it was like a war movie, and there was this one shot when it's basically like the DP on top of a truck or something like that with the camera, and the scene is basically just like running forward and then just a bunch of action going. Do you know what I'm talking about? And there's a lot of gunshots happening, and then he would fall down too, like the actor, but he would continue to go. I totally forgot.
Was it like all in one, and like it's supposed
one shot?
Supposed to be a one shot?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's 1917.
1917. Yeah, I really love that cinematography. Deacons.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
he's one of my favorites, I would say. Like, I know you met him.
Yeah, that movie. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, man, that movie is pretty good, especially like just doing those master shots, and especially having the budget to do that. So man, that was incredible. But you just have to know when to cut, because I think like even though that was kind of like sort of look like one shot, they did it brilliantly to like transition to the next scene. Yeah, to the next scene, and it looks so real. It's colored really well. Like, I also appreciate like films that are shot very well, but also colored very well too, because that totally changes the mood of the story and how it looks visually. But I also appreciate
you know those shots that are just like oneers and just one shot for like, I don't know, for sometimes even the whole film is one shot, but I know that, you know, a lot of them are cut, etc. But like those shots that are just like oneers, whether they're moving or not, are so impressive to me in many ways. I remember like we're just watching a couple of days ago, La La Land. I haven't seen that since actually a couple of days ago.
I haven't seen it.
But do you like those shots that are just basically like one shot? Because a lot of direction has to be involved in that, right?
Yeah, of course. And you have to know, like, block it a couple times, and you just have to know how to maneuver it. And, you know, you just have to, especially with camera operators, man, they are a beast. You need to know how to work, you know, that, especially the camera's huge. You know, it's like, yeah, you need to learn how to maneuver that Incredible Hulk, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, especially that whole rig, very heavy with the Steadicam. Even it's still pretty heavy. Yeah. But you mentioned earlier that you didn't like the grain in some cameras, but you know how there's sort of a debate of whether or not film is better than digital, and I would say that they have their own pros and cons, right? They have their own different looks. And I still think that film in itself is very unique. It's very artistic. It has its own elements, but it's very expensive compared to digital, right? Yeah. Compare and contrast both. Compare and contrast, you know, what's it like working on film cameras as opposed to digital cameras?
Well, like, film has its sense of course, like a nostalgic feel, especially if you know, it has certain grains, but it's not like huge and noticeable. So it has a lot of like texture. So for me, film, I love it. Like, it's in my heart. And digital is great too, especially getting, you know, really that nice, clean sharpness. And of course, it does kind of look like film in some ways, but not too much. But it's, you know, depends what the story calls for it, basically. You know, if you're doing a science fiction, then I will say you shoot on digital. But if you're doing a Western or like a period piece, shoot on film.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just see, I guess, the value in both of them because I've worked with both as well. Like, I also went to New York Film Academy and, you know, worked with various different projects on different cameras, stuff like that. And I think that every single camera has their own, I guess, unique, specialization. I don't know what the word is, but, you know, like some have better sensors, some are more, I guess, better with low light. Some of them are, you know, heavier than others, etc. Like, whatever the case may be. But I was curious to ask, I wanted to ask you, like, do you have any cameras in mind that, like, you always try to promote? Like, maybe like 3 to 5 cameras that you're like, if you had like 5 cameras for your entire rest of your life, like, what would they be, I guess?
Oh, man. Well, of course, I use these ARRI Super S2. Yeah, no, I think it was hold on, I totally forgot. I
personally like the Alex Mini LF. Like, as you know, when I look at various different movies and then they mention that it was shot on that camera, I think that's really good. And on the lower budget side, I really like like those Sony cameras. The Sony mirrorless cameras are pretty solid, I would say. Like, for you know, a lower end, really good at low light as well, and it's very light. Blackmagic is also very solid. Like, even the Pocket 4K, 6K, I would say, like, that's also, like, you know, affordable.
It's good for shooting guerrilla because it's so small, so people think you're taking a photo. You can go, you know, pop in a bus for it, and you can just get away with pretty cool shots because they don't see a huge camera. So if you want to do guerrilla, then that's the camera to go with.
Totally.
I would say, like, my favorite one is like Reflex SR3. It's a 16 millimeter camera, and it's just, you know, Ari is just good at that, and especially with D16. Man, that really captures a nostalgic. I also love, having low light sensor cameras like the Gemini, or basically Sony, especially Sony Venice.
Venice,
right
yeah.
Yeah, that one's really good. The FX9 is good too. I think that's probably the ultimate documentary camera. It's so flexible in so many ways. And I would just say my Canon Mark III.
Ooh, classic.
Only because that was my first camera.
Very nostalgic feel for sure. And it takes really good photos as well.
Yeah.
Do you ever get into those like hybrid cameras too, like that shoot both photo and video? Because I know you do both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I mean, I do shoot film on with photo cameras.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've shot on film as well, but it's been such a long time.
Yeah,
I'd definitely love to go back to that though.
For sure. Did we ever mention any Reds? Because that's a pretty popular pick with cinematographers out there.
Yeah, I mentioned the Red Gemini.
The Red Gemini. Yeah.
That's the one I have right now.
Yeah. Very good. All right, let's buy all of them and then just make a bunch of movies. Mm-hmm.
The only thing I don't like about that camera though is that you have to like really calibrate it every single fucking time.
Yes,
it's such a pain in the ass, especially when you move from one location to the next. God damn.
Yeah, even especially if you're working on like what you said, and also maybe some gimbal stabilization stuff like that. You have to keep calibrating it, but also. We talked about cameras, but I think something that's very overlooked, no matter what camera you have, are lenses, right? Because lenses are the ones that give the eye to the camera, and the lenses are really very important as far as the field tone. Whether you want to tell a story. Of different themes, etc. If you want something to be isolated in many ways, if you want a bokeh in the background, there's so many different options that you can do with lenses. So I wanted to ask you, what lenses are your top 3 to 5? So I would say like brand and then millimeter. I
love the Sigmas. Sigma lenses are pretty nice. Yeah, those are really good cameras. Lenses. They really are also fast, especially we have prime some of them. I love kind of like the 1.5 or, A2. But, I love also like wide lenses. Another brand I like is Takumar lenses. They're awesome. They're good for like photo cameras, but you could definitely, if you want to customize your camera, use those lenses. They're great. And, I kind of like, Cooks. Cooks are good too. They're kind of legendary lenses. Hawks. Yeah. Those are great. What else? The Japanese Lomos. I'm not sure if they're Japanese, but because I'm getting confused with another anamorphic lens that's similar.
Mm-hmm. I also love those anamorphic lenses that just create a bokeh in the background, but also like those oval shaped, kind of lighting. I totally love that. Yeah.
But I kind of love like especially a lot of anamorphics. I think on Mojave Shadows we use the Lumos and the Koas as well. And the only thing, they were like really, 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 really wide.
Really
wide. We
right?
got some of the edges distorted, and it worked for the story. So you see like a little bit on the edges, the rocks are kind of like swirling around.
Yeah.
Especially when the character Susan, when she's trapped like in between rocks, you can just see all the rocks just surrounding her.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool.
It worked out. There you go.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, a great selection of lenses and also, cameras. Because I really think that it does make a difference whether you're using one lens over the other, whether you're choosing even just the shot selection, right? Like if you want to choose a medium to a wide or like a close-up or extreme close-up and whatever lens you're using. Yeah, it totally sets the tone and feel, and it totally, I guess, sets you as a cinematographer to your kind of style, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to ask, like, for the listeners out there who need advice as far as cinematography is concerned, you know, how a lot of them are starting out each year. A lot of them basically decide, oh, I want to be a DP because there's so many different ways to tell stories through visual storytelling in camera work. So what advice would you give to cinematographers that are aspiring, who are just starting out in the journey in the field? Like, would you advise them to go to film school or not? Is that even necessary? Or like, would you advise them to, tutorials?
I think at this time and age, I don't think it's necessary. Maybe before the pandemic, I would say yes. But because, things are just so, with the inflation and a lot of things getting expensive, you can just look at online and just you do that and then just be on set, try to get as much experience as you can. And just and just learn from there. Just watch also, don't just watch movies, but you also just basically look at paintings, look at how the sun hits, look at people's faces and see how that lighting's hitting. You just have to really pay attention to those details. And then, also get some mentors, trying to find somebody who can mentor you. And just keep on learning, because I think also cinematography is a never stop learning process.
Yeah.
And you just got to be more open and, be persistent, try to keep going, never give up.
Yeah, never give up. And yeah, totally. I think that's important when you said, like, look at paintings, look at various things. But also, what about people who, let's say they don't have a camera, they don't know a place to start, they don't have, let's say, a certain budget to work with. Like, where do you think they should start with that? Do you think that, I get this advice a lot, just start using your phone and then just like work with that. So I wanted to ask you, like, where is actually a good place to start as far as like trying to learning cinematography?
So, just look for any jobs, but you have to be willing, like, to do those first jobs, work for free, just to get something. Of course, I mean, you're not going to get paid for it at first, but then, once you start working for free and getting those reels, then you get more experience and you can make your own reel and footage. And then from there, you just start, networking and network with as much people as you can. And just by going by set, and don't just work as a cinematographer, do other things as well. Like first AC, gaffer, grip, second AC, anything. And then from there, you just start learning, and then you start more learning about the craft. And then you go up and then you learn about cinematography. And then it just becomes a never learning process after that. and you meet amazing people too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You meet amazing people, you meet amazing peers, you meet mentors, you learn from just being on set and how, the set operates, stuff like that.
Yeah.
How, and even just the film language, right? Just the language of communicating with each other through terms that are very specific, among many things, right? But I think that even though I'm not much of a set person, I really value going on set as much as possible and learning from various people, because everyone has their own expertise and experiences, right? And then their own different stories, different, etc.
Yeah.
And maybe someday, like along the line, if you keep working on these sets, then, you'll have a lot of gained knowledge, gained experiences, whether you're working on your reel, etc. You may, end up working with someone you're going to be close with for the rest of your life that are like, similar filmmaker, etc. And, I have had this mindset, like as an editor, that I'm just gonna, continue to edit, and I don't want to basically be on set or etc. But I've learned to really develop, an understanding that filmmaking is a collaboration, and and it's very important for a story to work through collaborations with various departments, whether it's like production design, whether it's G&E, even crafty, I don't know, just like meeting those different types of people. But I wanted to ask this too, because a lot of cinematographers, I think I mentioned this to you earlier in the podcast, like about challenges and specific obstacles, but there's always like one or a few that come to mind for some people that are like, oh, that cannot happen again. Like, when talking about Murphy's Law or something like that. Is there any like set story that you have that was basically just like a very difficult situation, and how did you overcome it? Right.
Well, there hasn't been quite a lot. I think it's just that I think the only situations I've encountered that is with, I think in some documentaries I've been to, because you're basically using, you're basically working with real people. So documentaries for me was probably a little bit difficult. But other than that, I wasn't like, I didn't have any bad experience. Because everything was just already planned, mostly.
Yeah, I think that planning and pre-production is super important as far as like making a movie is concerned. But I've also had like stories like sometimes, even though they go through a lot of planning, everything's supposed to go well, and then some people like drop their hard drives or like drop like their cameras, stuff like that. You don't want to do, right? So honestly, just be careful. Don't drop anything. You'll totally be fine. But it seemed like you as far as going on set, like it seems like you really enjoy it. It's something like you really like to do, and want to do for the rest of your life. And where does that come from? Where does that passion and drive, for you to be a DP come from?
Basically just movies overall. I was watching a lot of films when I was growing up, and I kind of loved how visual and appealing they were. So yeah, I think from there, I learned a lot. And just also I had a brother who was really, he used to show me a lot of movies when I was growing up. So when he passed, I think my motivation just to encompass, just become a filmmaker overall is just to, it was just of him. So I just pushed myself. Basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely amazing. And, yeah, your brother, I've seen like posts about your brother and stuff like that. And, I appreciate you sharing, and opening to us about that. And I wanted to say, that a lot of people, a lot of filmmakers have this cycle of like, having a lot of passion and drive in the beginning, and then later on in life, and I've experienced this too, is that they feel like it's not going anywhere, or it's not adding value to society, or whatever the case may be, and then they end up giving up. Right. And they end up being like, okay, maybe I don't want to do this, even though they've invested so much time and energy into a craft. And then like years down the line, they're like, maybe I want to do something else. But they had that potential to be like really good. Right. So what would you say to those people who are in the, I guess, edge of giving up, or edge of like, they're almost giving everything away for whatever reason it may be?
I'll say, if it's in you, if it's in your heart, just, do you think you could start doing this for long as you want? Do you love it as much? Is this what you really want to do? Like, how inspired are you to do this? You just got to, and also just don't give up, basically. But if it's in you and you like it, just do it. If you don't, find something else that you're originally passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that passion is super important in all aspects of life. But unfortunately, sometimes passion does not lead to anything, or, you know, I hear this term a lot, like starving artists, like people really want to make art and stuff like that. But, you know, in some cases, they spend so much on their education, so much on their equipment, so much on various things. But then in the end, they just kind of flip the switch. So I think for me, I've had that before, but what really kept my motivation to really do this is a sense of purpose, right? Changing people's lives through the power of storytelling, and really inspiring as much as possible, as many people as possible, and really, you know, tell stories that are meaningful and important, that will create conversations, etc. Yeah. So, I guess, you know, coming from your perspective as a storyteller, like as a DP as well, what do you see? Like, what would you say is your purpose of, you know, being a cinematographer? Like, for example, like, why didn't you do something else? Like you said you come from a photography background. Like, why are you DPing more? Why are you not, you know, doing other departments more? Why DP specifically? What's your purpose?
So I think, like, for me, DP, I've had it as, you know, been doing it for a while. I love it. But the thing is, I mainly, you know, came to this industry as a director. And from there, I kind of learned, I was doing cinematography because I did it also. I learned cinematography, you know, especially getting on sets and, you know, trying to pay those bills. But, you know, they don't really come that often. So in a way, you have to do something on the side. So if you don't get a lot of those gigs, I mean, you just got to keep applying for it and get as much as you can, basically. And, you know, be open to a lot of projects, but also be careful with, you know, how many days you're going to be shooting, and also what's the pay range. And also, you know, you also have to value yourself in terms of your rates. So you have to really set up how much you value, how much you are, especially your gear.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. But it looks like also, like, you really value, like you mentioned earlier, about never stop learning, right? Never stop learning, because things always change. And for every project you do, you may try something different, something new, etc. Because there's unlimited ways of telling a story visually through being a DP, right? So how important is it for cinematographers or camera operators, like in your field, to continuously learn and maybe experiencing new techniques, technologies, etc.?
So basically, wait, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, like, how important is it for you as a DP to, you know, encourage others to never stop learning about, like, you know, maybe a new trend or
So, like, yeah, I mean, like, just, you know, basically just learn as much as you possible, but also what is basically the cinematography, are you going to still do it for a while? So you have to watch, you know, daily life and, you know, mundane, or just watch movies, basically. So you learn a lot. Just watch, also, you know, watch the classics, watch the old ones. You know, a lot of like filmmakers coming out right now, they just want to watch action and comedy. Yeah, just, you know, watch old school ones.
Interesting you say that, because, you know, some people I know of, like, don't see the value actually of watching the old films. Like, when they watch the old films, they say, like, no, I don't want to watch this. It's kind of, you know, not my taste, not my cup of tea. But for you as a cinematographer, you think that's important for people to look at history, like look at how the people from the past did it, for example, Citizen Kane, etc. Like, can you explain your reasoning behind, you know, seeing the value in, you know, learning about classic movies?
I mean, like, of course, you need to know, like, how they did it. especially like by seeing the shots, and also like just look at behind the scenes. Look at the going, if you can't find it on the DVD section on the
DVD
section, I mean, just go to YouTube
sure.
and see how like behind the scenes basically.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny because I had DVDs in the past, but everything's online now.
yeah.
But I still like whenever, because I went to university as well for film, and we watched like various films of different styles from the past, and at first when I was like basically in class, I wasn't seeing so much importance in them. But then now that I look back, those projects are the reason that the projects of today exist, right? This, whether it's like a certain style, a certain element, or whatever. I think that even just watching a few seconds of how they did it in the past, like black and white and even sepia, how they did it, what kind of shot selection, because I think it's very impressive for humans to come up with something that's entertaining, right? Even like going way back, maybe 1800s, when people, I think they're like flipping like pieces of paper or like something like that causes like a horse to run or something like that, right?
Yeah,
those are so impressive, and it starts from like way back, right?
It's especially like you just need to know the basics as well. So when you watch those movies, you just have to see like, wow, like how they light that. Like that looks pretty cool. Like the shot in Citizen Kane, for example. There's a shot where I think he's walking toward. It was in the office scene, and the camera's really, 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 really low. So they had to like dig a hole, basically, just rip off the hardwood floor, and just dig a hole and just put the camera right underneath. I mean, right there. So just to get even more lower. But you just have to look at those shots and just be inspired. Wow. Yeah,
totally. And never stop learning. And I really enjoy like even posts I see from social media or Instagram where you see the behind the scenes, how they did it, like how they lit. Right? How they organized the set, how they production designed it. Because there's so many different ways of doing it. So I think that there's always something to learn from, like whatever department you want to be in. Totally, never stop learning. And I think I've said that 1,000 times now.
yeah. All right.
But is there anything you'd like to share to the audience that you haven't shared yet?
Yeah, so basically, just keep on grinding. Be persistent, and just keep doing it, and don't give up. But also, just be careful, because I know when you try to make those money, try to find something on the side, and if it's not working out for you, just take a break and then come back.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I would say that never give up, but also like have a set criteria, a set plan for whatever it is that you do, and also a strategy, because, you can do as many things as you want. You can really work hard, which is very important. But I think working smarter is also important, like so that your set path and career goals that you want to do. Like, for example, if you want to be a cinematographer, there's so many different departments under that, right, that you can really learn from too, that are very valuable, like lighting, even just lighting. Just so many different branches out there, and also key grip.
And also like just find your voice, your niche, and what kind of cinematography you want to do. Like what are you as a person, basically? Like, if you haven't built a reel, then you have to. If that reel needs to identify you, basically.
Absolutely. Great pieces of advice. And it looks like we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask a few more. Is there anything you're currently working on, upcoming projects that you're excited about?
Yeah. So right now I am working on a documentary that I'm directing. Is based on a Native American tribe that hasn't been recognized on a state or federal level.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I am also writing a short that is going to be a proof of concept for a feature. It's a project called Mountain of Dreams. It's about two siblings who are crossing the border through the border of Mexico to California.
Great pieces of work and amazing stories. Anything you want to share from your past work? Like you mentioned, Mojave Shadows is also on Amazon, etc. But like anything you want to share in that regard?
Let's see. Well, I've done a couple. Like there's another film I did called Tell. And also be on the lookout for this film called A Prodigal Feast. It's comedic, funny. It's a really comedic horror film. It's really funny. But yeah, those, be on the lookout for that movie.
Absolutely. And where can people, I guess, see those like in the near foreseeable future?
Well, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But like for Mojave Shadows, you can look at it on Flix West, Amazon Prime, and also Cinematographers.
Absolutely. That's Mojave Shadows, Mojave Shadows. Amazing film. And I hope you didn't get spoiled today. I hope that when you were listening earlier about the pieces of the story, that you didn't get spoiled. So, and yeah, with that being said, thank you so much, Jaime. It's been amazing. Where can people find you if they want to reach out? Like if they have any questions as far as cinematography is concerned, or like your projects in general, like social media wise, where can people find you?
Go to my website called www.jtorresdp.com. And my email is jaimetorresdp@gmail.com.
And Jaime Torres is JaimeTorres, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely reach out to him if you have any further questions. But this has been such an amazing episode, and we learned a lot from Jaime today. And I hope that you reach out to him and look at his upcoming works that are coming up. So
thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.